I found out my best friend had been sleeping with my fiancé for months while I was planning our wedding, so I did something that shocked everyone. For the longest time, life felt like it was falling into place exactly how it should. Nathan Blake was everything I thought I could ever want. Steady, dependable, the kind of man people described as trustworthy without hesitation. He had this way of making me believe I was safe with him, like the future we were building together was untouchable. And then there was Cassidy Moore. Loud, adventurous, and unapologetically bold. She was the kind of best friend who could walk into any room and turn it into a party. She knew me better than anyone, had been by my side through every heartbreak and triumph. Choosing her as my maid of honor wasn't even a choice. It was obvious. She was family to me in every way that mattered. Planning the wedding was everything I had dreamed about since I was a little girl. I threw myself into every detail, the flowers, the colors, the playlists. Nathan didn't mind letting me take the reins, and Cassidy was always there to laugh about how obsessive I was becoming, promising she'd keep me from losing my mind before the big day. The three of us together felt like a team. At least, that's what I believed. But sometimes, in the middle of all the joy, something would flicker across my mind, a tiny feeling I couldn't quite explain. Nathan started coming home later than usual, brushing me off with quick explanations about work. Cassidy canceled plans more often, saying she was too tired or had errands to run, only to show up later acting restless and distracted. When I asked, they both gave answers that sounded perfectly normal, and I pushed away any doubts. Trust, I told myself. That's what love and friendship are built on. There were moments I should have paid more attention to, like the time Nathan answered a call and lowered his voice the moment I walked into the room, or the time Cassidy gave him a look I couldn't place, a smile that was gone almost as soon as it appeared. They weren't big enough to accuse anyone of anything, but they left behind a strange unease I buried under the chaos of wedding plans. One night stands out in my memory. I was on the floor surrounded by stacks of invitations, trying to decide between two fonts that looked nearly identical. Nathan walked in, kissed the top of my head absent-mindedly, muttered about being tired, and disappeared into the bedroom. Cassidy sat across the room scrolling through her phone. When she glanced up at him, her lips curled into the faintest smile, almost like she knew something I didn't. It was gone so quickly I told myself I had imagined it, but even now, I can still see it. At the time, I blamed the unease on nerves, on the pressure of planning a wedding that was supposed to be perfect. But looking back, I think I already felt the cracks forming. I just didn't want to admit what they really meant. At first, everything seemed fine, but then small things began to bother me. Nathan started acting different with his schedule. He used to tell me where he was going and when he'd be home, but lately his answers became short and vague. Sometimes he would say he had to stay late for work, but when I asked what he was working on, he would brush it off like it wasn't important. I told myself it was normal, that maybe he was just tired, but something about the way he avoided my questions made me uneasy. Cassidy also began acting strangely. She was always the one pushing me to go out, to meet for coffee, to run errands together. Suddenly she started canceling on me, giving excuses that didn't really add up. She'd say she was sick or had too much to do. But then I'd see her later that same day looking full of energy and glowing like she'd just come back from something exciting. She would laugh easily, seem distracted, and keep checking her phone like she was waiting for a message. I told myself she was just busy, maybe even seeing someone new, but deep down I wondered why she didn't tell me. I tried not to focus on it. I told myself I was under pressure from the wedding plan, and that was why I was overthinking everything. Every bride probably feels this way at some point, I thought. Stress makes people see problems that aren't really there. I clung to that idea because it was easier than facing the uneasy feeling growing inside me. One night, though, it became harder to ignore. I walked into the living room and heard Nathan on the phone. His voice was low, softer than usual, almost like he didn't want anyone else to hear. The moment he saw me, he turned his back and lowered his voice even more. I froze in the doorway, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. I only caught a few words, but they hit me like a sharp edge, not letting anyone find out. My stomach dropped. I stood there staring at him, wondering what he meant. When he hung up, he acted casual, asking if I wanted him to help with dinner. His tone was normal, like nothing had happened. I almost asked who he had been talking to, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I smiled, shook my head, and went on with what I was doing, pretending everything was fine. Inside, though, I was spinning. Was I imagining it? Was I becoming the kind of fiancé who spies on her partner and makes up problems where there are none? I hated how suspicious I was feeling. I told myself I was being paranoid, that Nathan loved me and Cassidy cared about me, and that the last thing I should do was doubt the people closest to me. But no matter how hard I tried to push it away, the uneasy feeling refused to leave. It happened on a day that was supposed to be filled with nothing but joy. I was getting decorations ready for the wedding, boxes stacked high in my arms as I carried them outside. Cassidy had offered to drive me to the store, and when I opened the back door of her car to load things in, something slid out onto the seat. At first, I thought it was just another jacket, but when I picked it up, I froze. It wasn't hers. I knew that jacket. It was Nathan. I had bought it for him last Christmas, the one he said was his favorite. I stood there for a long moment, staring at it like maybe I was wrong, like maybe my memory had betrayed me. But it smelled faintly of his cologne, the one he wore every day. I tucked it back where I found it, my heart beating fast, and forced myself to act normal when Cassidy came outside. She was smiling, laughing at something on her phone, completely unaware that I had just felt the ground shift under me. I tried to tell myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe Nathan had lent it to her one night. Maybe she borrowed it because she was cold. I wanted to believe that so badly, but the thought lingered in the back of my mind, heavy and unshakable. That night, while I was cleaning up around the apartment, Nathan's iPad lit up on the table. He usually kept it with him, but this time it was left behind. At first, I didn't mean to look, but a message preview flashed across the screen, and my chest tightened. It wasn't just any message. It was from Cassidy. My hands moved before I could stop them. I opened the iPad, and what I saw made my stomach twist. The screen was filled with messages, lines and lines of words I wasn't supposed to see. They weren't friendly or playful. They were intimate, filled with things you only say to someone you're with. They talked about nights together, about moments they had shared in secret. And then I saw the dates. It wasn't recent. It had been going on for months. All those times Nathan said he was away for work, all those nights Cassidy said she couldn't meet up, they had been together. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt tight. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the iPad. I read the same lines again and again, hoping maybe I had misunderstood. Maybe there was another explanation. But the words were clear, each one cutting deeper than the last. I felt sick. I ran to the bathroom and leaned over the sink, my whole body trembling. My heart was racing, but at the same time I felt completely numb, like I wasn't even inside my own skin anymore. I couldn't believe it, couldn't understand how the two people I trusted most had been lying to me all this time. I went back to the iPad, staring at the messages until the words blurred together. I didn't even know why I kept reading. I think some part of me was still searching for a way out, a way for it not to be true. But it was. And in that moment, everything I thought I knew about my life shattered. I couldn't carry the secret inside me any longer. The next evening, when Nathan came home, I sat across from him at the kitchen table. My hands were folded together so tightly my knuckles turned white. He tried to kiss me on the cheek like nothing was wrong, but I leaned back. His smile faltered, and I saw a flicker of worry in his eyes. I asked him straight out if he was sleeping with Cassidy. His face went pale, then red, then he laughed in disbelief, as if the very idea was ridiculous. "Of course not," he said. "Where is this even coming from?" His voice was calm at first, but I didn't move, didn't blink. I just told him I knew. I told him about the jacket, about the iPad, about every message I had read. He tried to brush it off, saying I was overreacting, but the way his eyes darted away gave him away. I pressed harder, repeating the words I had seen written between them, words no one could mistake. That's when his shoulders slumped. He didn't even fight anymore. He admitted it. "It just happened," he said, like that was supposed to make it better. "I didn't plan it. I still love you. I want us. It was a mistake." He said the words quickly, almost like he believed them, but each one felt like a knife in my chest. I sat in silence, staring at him, and the more I didn't speak, the more nervous he became. His excuse hung in the air, weak and empty. Later, I went to see Cassidy. I didn't want to, but I knew I had to hear her say it too. She opened the door with a wide smile, acting as if nothing had happened. When I asked her why she had done it, her expression changed. For a moment, she looked smug, like she had been waiting for me to find out. At first, she smirked and shrugged. Then, when I didn't react, she leaned against the doorframe and said, "You were too busy planning your perfect wedding to even notice him slipping away." Her tone wasn't apologetic. It was sharp, almost cruel, like she wanted me to feel small. Hearing her twist it into my fault made something inside me break. She wasn't sorry. Neither of them were. The two people I loved most had betrayed me and were now treating my pain like it was nothing more than a small misunderstanding. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry in front of her. My voice was steady, my face calm, even though inside I was crumbling. She kept waiting for me to lash out, but I didn't give her the satisfaction. I just stood there, quiet and cold, letting the silence hang heavy between us. That silence said more than anything I could have screamed. It told them both they no longer had power over me. The morning after everything came crashing down, I sat with my phone in my hand staring at the calendar. The date of the wedding was circled in bright red, a mark I had once looked at with excitement. My chest felt heavy as I opened the email to the venue and wrote a short message telling them the wedding was canceled. I didn't explain why. I didn't tell anyone what had happened. I just pressed send and closed the laptop. It was over, at least on paper. But outside my apartment, the world kept spinning like nothing had changed. My mom called asking about the final menu choices. My aunt texted to see if I needed help with the decorations. Friends kept asking about dress fittings, hotel bookings, and rehearsal plans. Every question was another cut, a reminder that no one knew the truth but me. I mumbled excuses, told them I was still sorting things out, and promised I'd share updates soon. Each lie made me feel smaller, but I couldn't bring myself to say the words out loud yet. Humiliation burned under my skin. How could I admit that the man I was supposed to marry had chosen my best friend behind my back? How could I tell people the girl I trusted most had been smiling in my face while sneaking away with him? The thought of their pity, their whispers, their shocked looks, it made me sick. I wasn't ready for that. At first, the pain kept me pinned down. I cried quietly in my bedroom, burying my face in the pillow so no one could hear. But after a few days, something inside me shifted. The sadness started to turn into something sharper. Every memory of their lies, every look they had exchanged right in front of me, it all hardened into anger. Not the kind that explodes, but the kind that settles deep in your bones and grows steady. I decided I wasn't going to let them walk away as if nothing had happened. They had taken so much from me already, but I refused to let them steal my dignity too. I knew if I screamed or begged, it would give them power. Instead, I promised myself I would stay calm. I would think. I would wait. And when the moment was right, they would feel everything they had made me feel. I didn't know the exact plan yet, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. This wouldn't end with me as the victim. They thought they had broken me, but they had only woken something I didn't know I had. My grief was gone, replaced by a quiet, burning anger that was patient and sharp. And with that, the pieces of revenge slowly began to fall into place. I knew I couldn't let either of them see what I was really thinking, so I forced myself to act calm, almost forgiving. When Nathan tried to talk, I told him I needed time, but that I wanted to try. He looked relieved, almost grateful, like he believed I was willing to work through it. He started coming home earlier, offering to help with small chores, kissing me on the cheek like nothing had happened. He thought my silence was a sign of healing, but really, it was the silence of planning. Cassidy was worse. She acted like nothing touched her. She made little comments that cut deep, but always with a smile so sweet no one else would notice. She would say things like, "I'm just glad you're strong enough to move forward," or "Nathan's lucky you're so forgiving." Her words dripped with pride, as if she had won something. She thought I was broken, that I would stay quiet forever. But behind closed doors, I was working. Every chance I got, I gathered proof. I went back through Nathan's iPad and took screenshots of every message I could find. I saved receipts from trips he had claimed were for work, but were really spent with her. I wrote down dates, times, and details until the timeline was so clear it couldn't be denied. Each piece of evidence felt like a stone I was stacking, building the weight of the truth until it was heavy enough to crush them both. I didn't carry it alone. One evening, I sat across from my brother Dean and told him everything. His face hardened as I spoke, but he didn't interrupt. When I finished, he reached across the table, placed his hand over mine, and said quietly, "We'll handle this. They won't see it coming." Dean didn't push me to expose them right away. He understood why I needed to wait, why I wanted the reveal to matter. Together, we started mapping it out, where, when, and how it would happen. We talked through every detail, making sure I had everything I needed so there would be no room for lies, no chance for them to twist the story. During the day, I played my role. I let Nathan believe he still had a chance with me. I let Cassidy think she had already won. I smiled at the right times, kept my voice soft, and nodded when people asked about the wedding, pretending everything was still in motion. Inside, though, I was steadying myself for the moment it would all come crashing down. Every word they spoke to me, every look they exchanged when they thought I wasn't watching, only made my resolve stronger. They thought they had buried me under their betrayal. They didn't realize I was only waiting for the right moment to rise back up and bury them with the truth. The rehearsal dinner was still on the calendar, and I made the choice not to cancel it. People assumed I wanted to keep the tradition, to celebrate before the big day. No one knew what I had in mind. I put on a calm smile and a simple dress, and when I walked into the room, everyone greeted me with warm hugs and cheerful voices. The place was filled with laughter, the clinking of glasses, and the smell of food. Relatives who hadn't seen each other in months caught up at the tables, and friends from out of town chatted about how beautiful the wedding was going to be. Everywhere I turned, people praised Nathan and me, calling us the perfect couple, the ones everyone admired. Their words hit like blows to my chest, but I kept nodding, pretending their compliments didn't feel like cruel jokes. Nathan sat beside me, his hand resting on mine as if he wanted to show the world how devoted he was. I didn't pull away. I let him play his part. He laughed with the guests, told little stories about our first date, and painted the picture of a man deeply in love. I watched him closely, wondering if he even realized how easy it had become for him to lie in front of a crowd. Cassidy was everywhere that night, moving between groups with her usual boldness. She hugged people, clinked glasses, and made sure her laughter filled the room. To everyone else, she looked like the proud maid of honor, ready to celebrate her best friend's big moment. But every time her eyes met mine, there was a flicker of something else. Confidence. Arrogance. The kind of look that said she thought she had already won. Dinner went on, plates were cleared, and the lights dimmed slightly as it came time for toasts. Nathan's father spoke first, his voice thick with pride as he described the man his son had become and how lucky he was to have found someone like me. My parents followed, speaking about love, commitment, and trust. Each word twisted inside me, but I kept my expression soft and steady. Then Cassidy stood with her glass in hand. Everyone turned toward her, waiting for her to speak. She smiled at me, that wide, bright smile she always used, and began her speech. Her words dripped with sweetness. She talked about how much she admired me, about the bond we shared, and about loyalty. She went on about love, the kind of love that stands through storms, the kind of love that never breaks. People wiped tears from their eyes as they listened, believing every word. I sat there frozen, my nails digging into the palm of my hand under the table. Each sentence felt like it was aimed directly at me, mocking me, daring me to break. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, my throat tightening, but I forced myself to stay still. The room erupted in applause when she finished, glasses raised high in the air. I smiled faintly, but inside I was burning. The moment was coming, and I was holding it back with everything I had. When the applause from Cassidy's toast finally settled, I rose from my chair. My legs felt steady, even though my chest was tight. Nathan reached out like he meant to guide me, but I pulled the microphone into my hands before he could touch me. The room quieted, and all eyes turned to me. I began softly, thanking everyone for coming, for traveling long distances, for supporting what was supposed to be a celebration of love. Faces smiled back at me, warm and expectant. They had no idea what was about to happen. I took a slow breath, steadying my voice, and let the truth spill into the air. I want to share something with you all tonight, I said, my eyes scanning the tables. It's not easy, but it's real. And I believe everyone deserves honesty before we go any further. For a moment, silence hung heavy. Then I held up the iPad I had tucked beneath my chair. I read aloud a few of the messages I had saved, each one clear, intimate, and undeniable. The words floated through the air like poison, changing the mood in the room in an instant. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just let the evidence speak for itself. Gasps broke out across the room. Forks clattered against plates. Nathan's mother covered her mouth with her hands, while Cassidy's father leaned forward, as if he hadn't heard me correctly. Nathan pushed back from his chair, stammering, trying to form an excuse. His words tangled together, nothing that made sense. Cassidy's face went pale, her hands trembling as she stared at the table, unable to look at anyone. I didn't give them time to explain. I didn't want explanations. This wedding isn't happening, I said, my voice sharp and clear. But at least the truth is. The room erupted. Some people shouted questions, others whispered in shock. My parents looked stricken, Dean already on his feet, ready to move with me. I placed the microphone back on the stand, straightened my shoulders, and walked toward the exit. The sound of chaos swirled behind me, Nathan's voice breaking, Cassidy sinking into her chair. But I didn't look back. Dean opened the door for me, and together we stepped out into the night air. The weight I had carried for weeks lifted with every step I took away from that. For the first time in a long time, I felt in control. Inside, the wreckage was theirs to face. Outside, I was finally free. Nathan's parents were horrified. His mother called me in tears, saying she couldn't believe her son would betray me in such a cruel way. She kept apologizing, as if his actions were somehow hers to carry, and promised me I deserved better than him. His father was quieter, but the disappointment in his voice was sharp and heavy. For the first time, I realized they weren't standing by him. They were standing with me. Cassidy's mother reacted in an even harsher way. I heard from someone close that she went straight to Cassidy's house the morning after the dinner. The argument was loud enough for neighbors to overhear, and at the height of it, her mother slapped her across the face. The betrayal had broken more than just my trust. It had shattered her family's pride too. Cassidy had been her mother's favorite, the daughter she bragged about. Now she was the daughter who had destroyed a friendship and a wedding in one blow. Messages poured in over the following days. Friends who had once doubted my strength now told me how proud they were. Some admitted they had noticed little things between Nathan and Cassidy, but never wanted to believe it. Others said I had done what they never could have, stood up in front of everyone, and exposed the truth without flinching. Their support wrapped around me like a blanket I hadn't realized I needed. Meanwhile, Nathan and Cassidy tried to explain themselves. They told anyone who would listen that it wasn't serious, that they hadn't meant to hurt me, that it had all gotten out of hand. But people weren't buying it. Friends stopped answering their calls. Invitations stopped coming. The same community that had once admired them now turned cold. Their excuses only made them look smaller. I couldn't stay in the apartment where Nathan and I had shared so many memories. Every room was heavy with lies, and I felt suffocated in the silence he had left behind. So I packed a few bags and moved in with my brother Dean. His place was modest, but it felt safe. He didn't push me to talk when I wasn't ready. He just gave me space, a cup of coffee in the morning, and quiet company when I needed it. Lying in the guest room at night, the grief still came in waves. I cried for the love I thought I had, for the future I thought was waiting. But beneath the sorrow was something new, something steady. I had faced the truth, spoken it out loud, and walked away. The pain was still there, but it no longer owned me. I wasn't broken. I was in control. Months passed, and life slowly began to take a different shape. The sharp pain that once lived in my chest faded into something lighter, something I could carry without breaking. I threw myself into work, spending long hours on design projects that had been pushed aside while I was busy planning a wedding that never happened. Clients noticed my focus and praised my ideas, and before long, new opportunities opened up. For the first time in a long while, I felt proud of myself, not because of who I was with, but because of what I was building on my own. Independence became my anchor. I learned how to enjoy mornings without waiting for anyone, how to cook dinner just for me without feeling lonely, how to walk into a room and not care if I had someone by my side. The silence in my life no longer felt empty, it felt free. Meanwhile, word about Nathan and Cassidy still reached me from time to time. They had stayed together, but not in the way either of them had imagined. Friends whispered about constant arguments, about doors slamming and voices raised. Trust, the very thing they had stolen from me, was missing in their own relationship. Every time I heard another story, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel joy either. I simply felt distance, like they belonged to another chapter of a book I had already finished. One evening, Dean invited me to a small family dinner. Nothing fancy, just a meal at his place with a few close relatives. I almost said no, out of habit, but then I realized I wanted to go. When I arrived, the table was set with simple food, candles flickering softly, and the sound of easy conversation filling the air. For the first time in months, I laughed without forcing it. The sound felt strange at first, then natural, like it had been waiting inside me all along. As I sat there, surrounded by the people who had stood by me, I realized I wasn't defined by betrayal anymore. It was part of my story, yes, but it wasn't the ending. What Nathan and Cassidy had done hadn't destroyed me. It had pushed me to see my own strength, to choose myself above everyone. When I left that night, the air was cool and clear. I walked slowly, breathing it in, my heart lighter than it had been in a long time. The future no longer scared me. It was wide open, waiting for me to fill it however I chose. And this time, it would be on my terms, built with my own hands, for no one but me. Do you think Leah did the right thing by exposing Nathan and Cassidy in front of everyone, or should she have handled it more privately? Let me know your thoughts in the comments because I'm really curious to hear different opinions. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss the next one.